of the Washington County Board of Commissioners. Here in the room, we have Commissioner Pam Treese as well as Commissioner Jerry Willey. Commissioner Dick Scouten is excused. He will be joining us in the business meeting tonight by Zoom. Commissioner Roy Rogers is currently in another meeting on behalf of us with Clean Water Services, so he'll be joining us later as well. So the first item on our agenda is board and leadership communication. Who would like to go first?
I have nothing to report.
Okay. Commissioner Willie, anything?
You were supposed to give me more time.
I'm so
Not you,
sorry.
Pam.
Oh,
Come on,
no.
Pam never does say,
a
I don't have
collective
anything to
effort.
report. She has lots to report. I think the most interesting thing that I want to communicate, and I'm looking for my notes from this morning, chamber board meeting.
Hillsborough Chamber?
Yeah, Hillsborough Chamber, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
They are working with a group of 4 Black individuals to establish the Black Advisory Business Council. And so we got an update on that today. It's pretty exciting as to what they are aspiring to do. I did take a screenshot, if you'll give me a minute, on some of the information that they communicated. The goals for the council is to amplify the efforts of Black-owned businesses, provide support, advocacy, awareness, and consultation, eliminate barriers to opportunities, address issues unique to Black-owned businesses and their families, encourage entrepreneurship, career opportunities, and career development, and create a safe haven for those experiencing systematic racism and acts of prejudice in business, on the job, in the community, or any other public space in Washington County. So it's pretty exciting to hear them. I encourage them to weigh in tonight at our board meeting, and I told them they came in early, it was 2 minutes. If they came in late, it was 5 minutes, but to at least brief the commission on what they're doing and where they want to go. So I thought that was pretty cool. So it's a good thing.
Great, thank you. I have just a few items to report. The Westside Economic Alliance monthly board meeting was last week. They talked about upcoming steps for considering an endorsement position on the Get Moving 2020 transportation measure. And so their committees will be going through that process soon. Last Wednesday afternoon, our Director of Health and Human Services, Marnie Kyle, and myself met with the Washington County School Superintendents. And it was a good meeting to talk about where the community is at with regard to COVID cases. And a good exchange of information about some of the really challenging efforts that they're dealing with in planning for the new academic school year. There are 4 message points that they've come back to us in terms of support and otherwise. They're needing to know more about how the county can lead on school districts. And Marnie and the team here in Washington County are trying to scale up the engagement with them. Then the other thing that they were communicating that I think needs some change, communicating that the county has responsibility to manage the virus in the community before we can reopen schools. Well, we all know that the county doesn't manage the virus, the community manages the virus. We are here to help our community members, and we've certainly been, well, our staff especially, all of us have been trying to help our community slow the spread of this virus. Those efforts will continue, but the power really is in individuals' hands. Prioritize messaging for mask use, including best practices for controlling the spread of the virus. You know, we're just keeping at it. from the state on down. Child care leadership, child care, just like for us as an employer, child care is a concern for their employee base as well as for parents. And then we are moving forward to have a monthly call with them to help with their pandemic support. I have a couple other things to mention. I had my every other week chair mayor's meeting on Monday and heard from them quite clearly about their dismay to see that the Washington County Board has before it a decision to consider placing the Washington County Kids proposal on the November ballot. I made it clear to them that we are considering this, but doing so in a public manner. We have in our packet already letters from the city of Beaverton, the city of Hillsborough, and the city of Forest Grove, their city manager level, in opposition to putting this on the ballot. So we have that on our work session agenda as well as before us tonight as well. But I wanted to make sure that I represented to you that they're displeased about it, their key concern being having increased compression should the voters approve this, and also their concern that they're doing everything to keep costs down for city services, and that includes fees for water, sewer, you name it, just as we are doing. And their concern about putting an additional cost burden on the next tax year if this should pass.
I have a question about that.
Yeah.
You mentioned that there was a letter from the city of Forest Grove. I have a letter in the packet from the Forest Grove School District, but I haven't seen a letter from Forest Grove.
We have not seen a letter from the city of Forest Grove.
Did I say Forest Grove? I
Yeah.
meant to say Sherwood.
Sherwood, correct.
Hillsborough, Beaverton, and Sherwood. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. Thank you. I just wanted to make sure I had the information.
No,
So
thank you. Thank you. I appreciate your catching my mistake there. Then I wanted to let you know that I participated in a press conference this morning. I've sent you detailed information by email. There was a group that started convening over 6 weeks ago, a set of prominent Black leaders here in our communities, invited state legislators, invited the governor and her office, state legislators, representatives from each of the counties, in our case, myself and Commissioner Treese, and to engage, as well as the city of Portland, to engage with us and get commitment from us with regard to our activities to address institutional and systemic racism. Commissioner Treese and I were able to, with help from staff, represent what it is this board has already adopted and has underway. And to, as we are doing with our path for diversity, equity, and inclusion, to continue to be engaged. So I provided further information for all of you via email. And that's it for my board communication until we get to the formal agenda. So leadership communication.
We had our first round Chief Equity and Inclusion Officer interviews last Friday, and the panel recommended 3 candidates for final interviews, which will be held on August 6th and 7th. Very similar to the process we use for the county administrator interviews. The first day we will have 2 panels. One is a staff panel and the other one is a community panel. And they will both do what we're calling meet and greets with the candidates and then provide their thoughts and comments to the final panel on the following day, who will conduct the final interviews.
If I might, and I meant to highlight this earlier, I know that our incoming CAO, Tanya Angie, will be participating in that. And I meant to give a report out. We have learned that the current city manager for the city of Boulder is retiring. And our incoming CAO is a deputy city manager for the city of Boulder, Colorado. And so I touched bases with her, and she wants everyone here to know that her last day with the city is Monday, August 3rd, and that the city will be reading a declaration in her honor at tonight's meeting. She is absolutely committed to joining us here and very much looks forward to it. So should anyone have wondered about that, she is rock solid in wanting to come join us all here in Washington County. So there you have it. Thank you for the reminder. Hello, Brad.
I'm just keeping Alan's seat warm right now. He would probably want me to share that, we have a couple ballot titles before the board today, and we have a direct interest in making sure those things happen.
Great. Brad Anderson there for the record. You do have a last name, and I actually remember it.
I do.
I didn't mean to shortchange you. Thank you. Hi there, Diane Taniguchi-Dennis, CEO of Clean Water Services. What have you got for us today?
Thank you, Chair. There's 2 items. I'm going to ask Mark Jockers to come up to give a briefing on the Fano Creek Regional Trail. But before Mark's Jockers starts, we have Mark Poling on the line, and he's retiring this week, and he would like to thank the board and to talk to the board.
Hi there, Mark. Congratulations. Oops, I think you're on mute.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Great, thank you. Well, thank you, Chair Harrington, members of the board. I can't tell you how fortunate I've been in my career to have spent so much time working with Clean Water Services, and so much of it has been due to the great support that we've received from the board. It's really been an honor and a pleasure to serve, and I can't thank you again enough for all that you've done for the district and for me. And for that, I am truly grateful, and I thank you once again.
Well, I'm sure my colleagues have some comments as well, but if you don't mind, I'll kick it off. Thank you very much for your decades of contribution here to ensure the health of the Tualatin River watershed. You've been a great key leader, not only in our agency, but also in the industry. The staff at Clean Water Services is just marvelous. And thank you for role modeling retirement. I wish you and your family the best years ahead. And I so appreciate what you have taught me in my 18 months as chair doing this work with Clean Water Services.
Well, thank you. It's been my pleasure.
Mark, I want to just say to you, congratulations. What a great decision you've made. I look forward to watching for you in the Tour de France in late August this year. So I'll be watching for you, and if not, I'll be watching for you on the roads of Washington County.
Please, thank you very much.
Thank you for everything you've done.
Yeah,
My
Mark,
pleasure.
congratulations, and go forth and enjoy this time. But remember, we know where you live, and we know what you like to do. So you'll always be kind of upfront about if we need some volunteer help. We'll certainly be reaching out to you, and we'll be glad to see that. Also, I'd encourage you to be a little careful in this. I have flunked retirement 3 times now, and so be very careful because you can get sucked back in. So enjoy your time.
I'm a little worried about that as well.
Yeah.
Thank you for the warning.
Yeah, congratulations, Mark.
Thanks again.
And I have to,
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much.
I do have to say, he is going to be sucked back into the CWS, CWI sort of mode. He is going to be helping us, even as he's retiring in a strategic business consultant role. We need help with our utility billing upgrades, so the CIS upgrades, so he'll be providing support to Kathy Leader still as we go through that. And also the PPE initiative that we have going with CWI. Mark has so graciously said he would continue to help us there. So, thank you, Mark.
I'm
We
already
have to finish the agreement, right?
You're not doing so well.
No.
But only part-time.
Thank you for demonstrating a transition.
Thank you.
And now to the other Mark, Mark
Yes.
Jockers.
Thank you very much, Chair and members of the board. I wanted to point your attention to the Privy Council that we distributed to you today. I wanted to give you a brief update on the Fano Creek Trail, Regional Trail Project. So as you recall, and many of you may be familiar, in fact, I think you probably are, the Fano Creek Regional Trail goes under Shoals Ferry Road, and it is well within the floodplain and is frequently flooded. Some of that has been probably exacerbated by the restoration work that has gone on, where that what used to be a straight ditch on Fano Creek over the last 15 years has really been transformed into a really complex, healthy stream system with waterfowl and fish and beavers. That's our other friend that's there, and that's a real keystone species for us. If we've got beavers back in the system, we know the system's healthy. But that also helps back up water in that area. So last year, at the request of the City of Tigard and THPRD, and also working with Washington County, we started looking at some solutions that might be able to help address this problem. So a number of things have happened. City of Tigard put together a team to examine what would be an at-grade crossing at Shoals Ferry. That proposal is out in a virtual public open house right now through the end of actually this week. They're looking at that. In the more shorter term pieces, we installed a real-time water gauge, Clean Water Services did, that we're able to read remotely. So we can get a sense of how high the water is and whether or not that is inundating the trail. So we could get a pretty predictive idea of how often the trail was open, how often it was closed. One of the proposals that came out of that is some design work that we're doing with THPRD and the City of Tigard to raise that, to raise the trail by a foot. And by raising the trail by a foot, we can increase the usage of that site by at least 50%. So a pretty significant increase in the amount of opportunity there. If you've been on that, you can imagine when we raise the trail a foot, perhaps me, but certainly not Mark Poling, will be riding his bike underneath there. So there is some gates that will be set up to encourage people to dismount and to watch their head and pieces like that. But I think it's a pretty straightforward, simple solution. We continue to work with the City of Tigard and THPRD in terms of trying to manage the beavers, which is not the easiest thing. I know Commissioner Treese was out with us last year when we go and notch those beavers and put in water, beaver deceivers.
I think you mean the dam you notch, not the beaver itself.
We're not actually notching the beaver. No, that would be a good point. Thank you
Just for clarifying.
calling that, for the beaver dam. So we're continuing to do that. The other thing that I think is very interesting, and you may have seen that, as you go downstream of Shoals Ferry Road, the path there is often inundated with water, and there's kind of this natural game path that people have all of a sudden created a little higher up. City of Tigard just decided to say, well, if that's where people are going, let's just move the whole trail over there. So that's going to have a pretty significant improvement too in terms of the usability of that trail. This is the nature of living with nature and living with beavers and how we manage both those things. I think people go on that trail in part so they can see all these things that are there. It's not just riding along a street. You're riding along a beautiful park. So that's the update I wanted to provide. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Doesn't look like there are any questions. Really
you.
exciting work being done. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark.
So that's it for leadership communications. For the formal agenda tonight, before entertaining questions, I have one for my colleagues. Given we have 3 big action items on the agenda for this evening. Well, there are 4 action items, but I think the temporary expansion for the private parking lots during the COVID emergency, judging from the work session conversation, is not as large as the other action items. So tonight, we have public hearings on the 2 different Washington County charter changes. So folks who want to come to testify on those items will come and speak during the public hearing for those items for up to 2 minutes apiece. On the item to consider the Washington County Kids Levy, I was thinking that rather than have those folks come and speak during oral communication, that we would have them get a staff report on the Washington County Kids question that is before us, then take the testimony on that item, and then have our whatever motion from the majority from the board, and then our action from there.
So the idea would be to have the people who are providing testimony have the benefit of hearing the staff report as well. Okay, yes, I would support that.
Is that reasonable? Okay. Okay, and Kevin is ready to manage that just fine. And I wanted to make sure that for each of these, generally when we have a public hearing on a land use ordinance with a subsequent action to accept the findings, quite typically, Commissioner Rogers has us, after we've finished the public hearing, he'll make a motion for us to adopt the ordinance and then bring the action item forward. So he's not here with us yet today, but I was wondering, would we have no, we can do, we're fine with the order. We're fine with the order. That would make sense to keep the order, have the public comment during the public hearing, then go through the action items. But what I want to make sure you're comfortable with is that we'll have a motion on each of these items, and I want to make sure that you are all comfortable in making whatever comments you want to make. So I will make sure to look around the room and have you make whatever comments you want. Okay? So, and we'll have Commissioner Scouten attending on Zoom as well. So at the beginning of the meeting, I'll go over the logistics as well, so he's all set with it too. Okay, with that, are there any questions on tonight's formal agenda or things that you want to clarify? Okay. I will make note of the packet of written testimony that Kevin Moss, our board clerk, has provided as well. Okay, great. Well, unless we have anything else on formal agenda, we'll move right into a COVID-19 update with Marnie. And Marnie, thank you not only for what you do each and every day with your team, but also for staying healthy. I mean, you've been under tremendous strain. Tremendous strain since February 28th, right? And you prepared not only your organization, but the county in advance of February 28th, our first confirmed case. So thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Harrington and board. I didn't have anything big prepared for the work session. I just wanted to give you a preview of what I'm going to talk about tonight and see if there's anything that you want to explore before tonight. So, of course, I'll go through the numbers as usual. I think that you've all seen that our OHA indicators are all red again, and so I'll be sharing that tonight. And then I've also added hospital capacity because that was of interest after the last presentation that Dr. Rep did with us. And have some good news on that. We actually this week have better capacity, so that's a little bit of a bright spot. There's been a lot of questions and interest in the EOC and how they're managing personal protective equipment and what our inventory is and how that's working. So I have a couple of slides just to demonstrate the inventory that we have and the inventory that we're actually probably getting as I'm speaking right now. We're expecting, I think they said 64 flats or cartons of PPE. So they're receiving that. And then I'm going to focus a little bit on Ready School Safe Learners, the OHA plan that we're working with the schools. So I'll talk about what the plans that the schools have to include, what's incorporated in those plans. I'll talk about the role that public health has been playing, and then I'll talk about some of the policy issues that we've been discussing with the superintendents and raising with the governor's office through you all and through public health and the health officers. And then it's been a while since I gave you an update on the homeless strategy, so a quick update on that. And that's it. I end with my normal asking people to remember to stay away from crowds and their hand sanitizing and face masks. So that's the plan for this evening, but I just wanted to give you a heads up or an overview of what I was going to be bringing and see if there's anything that I'm missing that you want, or if you have any questions you want to discuss before then.
I just received a news flash that the governor's doing a press conference right now. So
Yes.
you'll have advantage of that information, or you may already have it.
I actually probably may not have the specifics. I'm going to see what I can learn between this work session and tonight. It's not in the slides, but anything that I can update you on as we hit those slides, I will.
And it looks like it's about school reopening.
Yep.
Yes, my understanding is they're going to be sharing what the actual indicators, metrics will be. So I know what the discussion has been. I don't know exactly where they landed. So I'm hoping that they'll post that quickly after the 1:30 press conference.
Thank you.
Marnie and her team did provide feedback to OHA to try to, or in championing better metrics. So
Yeah.
we appreciate that effort.
We're anticipating some type of rate that will be applied to counties.
I'm wondering, it's a pretty intense time of thinking about the academic year starting. Would you like us to figure out how to make some work session time, maybe next Tuesday or sometime, even if it's our roundtable on August 14th, to go over the school information? Because I know you're going to get peppered with questions, just like you did back in May and June from businesses. Would that consider, just let us know. And
I'd like to receive that.
Yeah, I have some for tonight and updates, but we can dive a little bit deeper next Tuesday.
just going through the July 22nd version of the information, it's pretty thick.
Yes,
You know,
69 pages.
I only made it through 29 pages so far, so.
And that's the second time I've seen it, so.
Yeah.
It's really interesting, being a grandparent and having grandchildren here and on the East Coast. The anxiety level for both families is is pretty high. And I understand it intellectually, but it also has that emotional effect, which we in turn, I think, hear about from our constituents. So I would like to have as much information as possible as we
Sure.
get those questions.
Yep. And I think that it's incredibly stressful for parents right now, in particular. And I would just say that includes our staff. They're all trying to figure out what their plan is, and it has the potential of having an impact on our ability to conduct business, as it does for all businesses. Will staff be able to come back full-time? And because we can't continue to ask staff, and I'm saying community-wide, I'm not speaking for the organization, but we can't continue to ask people to parent, teach, and to do full-time jobs, especially, think about the number of single parents that just the stress is going to, have long-term impacts as well as COVID. So we have to help our families figure this out and work with the schools and work with our community-based organizations and work with our businesses to look at their HR policies and support systems for workers. Yeah. I'm just thankful that I don't have young kids right now. I just can't imagine. I don't know how their parents are doing it. I don't know how they do it. And they've been doing it since March.
So I have another question. I'm starting to see in more media presence, Dr. Fauci and other well-respected, peer-supported epidemiologists across the nation talk about how we are just at the beginning of this journey with this pandemic, which in some ways is a little hard to internalize, because we've been at it for 5 months and it doesn't feel like just the beginning of a journey. What I'm wondering, OHA has their models, but as far as I know, don't those only go out a few weeks? I'm really wondering how we as a public service agency, public supporting agency, as well as an employer, should plan for the next, through the end of the year, what kind of seasonal response there might be. Now, as I ask that, I know full well that the community spread and occurrence of this virus is not in any way controlled by us. It's the responsibility of each and every community member. So I don't know if I'm asking for something that is just Pollyanna. And if it is, then you shouldn't sweat it. But at the same time, I want to make sure we're prepared for the worst case, right? Plan for the worst, hope for the best. But I also don't want to be, what's that person that was always crying wolf, or, I don't want to just be a doomsdayer either. So, I don't know, any thoughts?
Well, those are all great points, and I think it's swirling in all of our heads. And I think, our interim administrator, Steve Rhodes, has had those thoughts, and we've started to have conversations and starting to work with our teams about how do we move towards normalizing this, because it's not going to go away December 30th. And so what do we need to put in place? And I think your questions are the questions that we're just barely starting to list the questions. So we're a ways from doing that, and we're going to work on a framework that we can bring to Steve and county admin to at least think about as an organization, because we certainly can't be in emergency mode for the next 2 years.
Yeah.
So we're starting to have those conversations early, baby steps.
Yep. Okay. Normalize living with COVID. Thank you for reminding me about that.
Yes.
Okay. Any other commissioner questions or thoughts? No? Well, thank you very much, Marnie.
See you this
Appreciate it, and
evening.
we'll see you this evening. Okay, we're a little ahead of schedule, so those folks who might be tuning into Zoom to listen to our meeting, we don't always go by time certain, that's for sure. So we'll move on to the next topic, Washington County Kids Fund Levy Renewal, levy proposal. And we talked about this topic last Tuesday, and we had several different questions. And so we asked our staff to come back this week to see if they could address some of our questions. So that's what we're trying to do today. And so Steve Rhodes is here to try and help us. Mr. Rhodes.
Thank you, Chair Harrington, Commissioners. There were 4 main questions that were presented to staff to answer, provide more information to the board. And those were if the costs that were allocated for administration were adequate to meet the administrative costs. Does the county staff have the capacity to administer the program? And are libraries interested in participating in the program? And the last one was just more questions about compression and how that would work from the levy.
I thought there was one other question about what was the plan to incorporate the disadvantaged communities into the grant process. I believe that Chair Harrington asked that question. What was the upshot was, how can we be assured that our disadvantaged communities are getting a portion, how are they apportioned the money?
Right, but I believe that's a question for the proponents of the levy.
Okay, thank you, you're right, you're right.
And towards that end, not to present it, but they did provide us with a letter of information that I believe Kevin has provided for us.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, it is included. It was sent to you electronically, Commissioners and Commissioner Treese. It is in your packet right there. From Susan Bender-Phelps sent that letter.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Excuse me for interrupting.
No, it's quite all right. We're all in this together.
Okay. Excuse me. The proponents of the levy have proposed or provided for up to 7% of the proceeds to be used on administrative overhead. And that amount would be approximately $1.6 million per year. Our staff and Health and Human Services took a look at that. Based on similar programs that they already operate, they estimated it'd be about $350,000 to $500,000 per year to administer the program. So it's clear that those, the set aside that they're proposing would be more than adequate. Now, this is a new program for us anyway to operate, and so there may be unidentified costs that can come up as we get into that, particularly depending on the complexity of the RFPs and requests for proposals that are used. But because of the set aside, we believe there's adequate funds that would cover those costs. So I think those are not a concern at this point. The program would actually be administered as it's proposed by the Children, Youth, and Families Division of our Department of Health and Human Services. And it is consistent with much of what they do now. So in terms of being familiar with the needs, I believe that division of Health and Human Services is familiar. However, they have identified, and that's part of where our costs come from, is that it would require new staff to operate this program. So we could not operate it within our current staff. So a question about if our current staff could handle it would be no, but the funds are adequate to bring on new staff in order to administer the program. And with the experience in that division, we don't see any problems in terms of being able to administer that program. The next question was regarding libraries' interest, and the libraries responded, which I might add, all the departments had a hand in providing comments back that I compiled into this report. So I've taken advantage of that to put this together. But libraries have not provided the kind of kids programs that this proposal contemplates. They run more after-school homework kind of programs that are one-on-one types of encounters in the libraries and are of limited duration. They're not a regular programming as, again, this proposal foresees having. However, in looking at the new reality of post-COVID or even during COVID, the libraries probably will be moving towards programs of this nature because the requirements of COVID is more structure so that you can manage contacts, you know how that's going, you keep your groups the same, which would say the libraries need to shift some of the way they do their programming, and they're interested in doing that and would certainly be interested in being included in the list of participants that were eligible for the grants through this program. I might add that I spoke with the city managers last Friday regarding the program. They had many questions. And that was one thing that they expressed strongly, was that if there was a program, that their libraries should definitely be included as participants in that program. The final question about compression is very, very difficult to deal with. And I just have to preface whatever I say with the fact that it's worth nothing in terms of the actual dollar amounts that will occur in compression, because compression, as you may know, is a property by property calculation, and it's only known as a moment in time when the tax roll is put together. So with the current tax roll not done yet, since it's not required to be done till later in the year, the only look that we can do at compression is for the 2019-2020 tax year, and just do some guesstimating, if you will, of impacts and project how those might or might not occur. Because we're using the 19-20 tax year, we're using the current public safety levy and the current library levy to draw a picture. Now, the library levy will remain the same, but the public safety levy is changing. So the picture that I put together with the 2020 tax year will be inaccurate when you try to apply it to the 2021 tax year. I want that to be clear, because the assessor's office is always very, very concerned when we start speculating on tax and tax impacts. But in order to try to answer the question, I went ahead, they gave me material to help me do this, and I went ahead and did calculations. So if the levy had been in place this tax year, it would have added approximately $200,000 more compression to the public safety levy and $143,000 more compression to the library levy. Now, and I have the total amounts of the levies there, and so you can see that those are just about 1% of the levy, probably a fairly minimal number, except for if you figure a deputy, top of the range, first level deputy is about 90,000 a year, then you can see that while it's 1%, it still equates to staff that would not be able to be brought on because of that compression. But again, I don't want to overstate it because it is simply 1% of a large levy. The only other taxing district that would be severely impacted by compression, and again, if we were looking at it today, is the Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue. And the compression impact on them is about $339,000. Their total levy is $97 million. So again, it's a small portion of their entire levy. This levy would not impact the schools, the education, because the compression calculations are done on general government and on schools. And because this levy would be characterized as general government, the compression would only be looked at as it impacts other general government levies. With that, I'll try to answer any questions that you may have about this.
Commissioners? Well, I don't have a question per se, but I would like to play the numbers back to make sure I absorbed them. And you have them all here. So from reading this, the two different Washington County levies, the public safety levy and the library levy, provide a combined, whoops, no, I made a mistake. $42 million a year, and the addition, if this Washington County Kids Levy existed in the same year, would add or detract over $418,000 out of that $42 million for those two specific ones.
That's correct.
And the other jurisdiction you believe is severely impacted is Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue, where out of the $97 million, they would lose essentially another $340,000, approximately. I'm absorbing the math correctly?
Yes.
Okay. And then for all taxing districts, that's non-educational? So all the general government ones?
Yes.
That's the total compression of $930,000?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, a lot of numbers, but I wanted to make sure I absorbed them correctly. Thank you very much. Commissioner Treese, did you have any?
No, I do want to confirm what you said about it was between, the cost to administer the program was between $350,000 and $500,000 for administrative costs, correct?
Annually, yes.
With an available administrative amount of 1.6, was it?
Correct.
Per year, yep.
And so does that include hiring new people, new staff to administer this program?
Yes. Yes, it does. Those are fully loaded costs.
Okay. Okay.
So I'm not sure I understand that. They're allocating 1.6 million to administrative costs, and you're saying we can do it for 300 to 500?
Yes, what they did without having any good numbers or good estimates, they simply said up to 7% of the levy can be used for administrative costs. It's up to, they didn't say, will be. So, so our job was to see if that number was adequate, and our calculations show that it's more than adequate, which means the remainder of that money will go into grants rather than into administration. Does that answer your question?
Well, yeah, I'm not sure I agree with that, but I'm not smart enough to figure that out either. Yeah, I think the compression certainly is important to me. I mean, we can say it's 930,000 and it's 1% or something of that, but it's still $930,000 we're talking about. Real head count, we're talking about real money in certain instances. I don't understand why, and I've been hearing about this proposal for, I don't know, 8 years. I was mayor when they first presented this. I think the constant concern about this, one of them is that it's 35 cents and it generates $23 million a year for 5 years. And that's a lot of money to begin a brand new program. I just don't think there's enough structure to this that convinces me that the $23 million is going to be, I guess, I don't know what I want to say about that. It's a lot of money to come out of the chute initially. When you consider that our library levies have been going on for years and years at 22 cents, serving, the 600,000 people in the county, and what we're told, 2 to 3 million visits a year in our libraries, and it's all done on 22 cents.
Plus the general fund money, which is appreciable.
Well, I understand that, but so's the 22 cents is the money that they're managing all of this on, and a significantly higher impact countywide. Probably the most critical factor to me is that, once again, I said this last week, we have, when LUT came to us and asked for a fund increase, we pushed back on that and agreed to half now and half later. I don't think it behooves us to put an additional cost on our taxpayers at the property tax level. And I don't think that in this day and age, this time frame, maybe a year from now, maybe want to reconsider that or something, but certainly for right now, I think we've already anticipated an additional 3 or 5% of unpaid taxes is budgeted for this year. And so now we're going to add another tax to that. And it says $104 is the average cost per home. That's on a $298,000 home, and I'd guess that there's not a heck of a lot of those priced houses, certainly in our district. So maybe that's the average assessed value. I saw the charts and everything else, but I think it's going to impact our taxpayers a heck of a lot more than $104 a year. So I am not in favor of this. And I can only say that the responses, I've looked at all the letters we've got. I have been in communication with representatives for all of the mayors in Washington County, and there isn't one mayor that's in support of this. So I think we have to listen to our other elected leaders representing their cities. And if the mayors are not in support, and I have the concerns on my own anyway, I am not going to be supportive of this going on the ballot.
Do you have any other questions for staff? Commissioner Treese, do you have any other questions for staff?
No, I just want to say thank you to Steve for coordinating the effort. I've made my own phone calls to several staff members as well, and I appreciate the responsiveness there. So I've been doing my own research independently as well as getting information from Steve. So thank you for that. This has required a lot of thought.
Yep,
So
ditto. All right, well, seeing no additional questions for staff, we'll move on to the next item on our work session agenda, the Public Safety Coordinating Council bylaws and appointments with Deputy County Administrator Aaron Calvert. Welcome, Aaron. It isn't often that we have public safety related topics before us in work sessions, so we appreciate that.
I do have one last minute document to hand out.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Kevin's getting that to us. And we'll need to make sure it's updated into the packet afterwards.
Yes. So good
Oh,
afternoon,
this
Chair
looks
Harrington
familiar.
and Commissioners. For the record, I'm Erin Calvert from the County Administrative Office. And today I have the opportunity to talk with you about the Public Safety Coordinating Council, as the Chair mentioned. As you know, this committee is statutorily required per a Senate bill in 1995, which directed government to coordinate local criminal justice and juvenile justice policy and make recommendations for the use of state resources for public safety purposes. I have included in your packet both statutes that pertain to the PSCC. Before I go much further, though, I would just want to acknowledge a couple of things. And that is that it doesn't appear that much, if anything, has been brought to your board's attention in terms of the Public Safety Coordinating Council. For the past year, that's been partially on me, just not knowing what I didn't know and then not knowing the depth of what needed to be done when I came into this office with regard to PSCC. But having said that, it also appears by review of the records that perhaps not much has come before the Board of Commissioners since about 2014. With two fairly recent exceptions, and that's the representative for the agency serving victims of crime, and that position was established per statute in 2018. And then the reappointment of the statutorily required lay community member whose last term also began in 2018. I'm hopeful we can address both of those expired terms and determine a path forward as part of our work session today. And then the other thing I want to acknowledge is that the current PSCC bylaws were written in 2001. I'm not sure they've been regularly put into practice in terms of membership, so that is another thing I'm hoping we can untangle in today's discussion. I have included the newly proposed bylaws in your packet, but I realize it's really hard to look at new bylaws without kind of a track changes on an old version. And so we just simply didn't have an electronic copy of that, so we kind of had to start over writing that. So my takeaway in reviewing the file and talking with you today is that whatever direction you do give, my intention is to ensure that I'll be back before the board on a regular basis to have a clear kind of communication path so that you understand and know the work and the recommendations of the Public Safety Coordinating Council and that we keep current on our membership and our terms. And then lastly, just on the topic of acknowledgements, I'd want you to know that the PSCC is a really collaborative group of partners that communicate and problem solve really well together. And they're looking to expand membership that will align with the board's intentions and expectations. So moving on, unless there's any questions, I am happy to go over the new bylaws page by page or just answer any questions or sort of orient you to what's changed if you have any.
Well, I know I have some specific questions. What would you commissioners like her to do a walkthrough or just approach it by questions?
Well, I'm, obviously I was in attendance at the meeting,
Yes.
so I'm privy to the conversation, so I would defer to you. If you could, a suggestion might be that you highlight the areas that we discussed and change, and then,
Sure.
yeah, in a, I guess the Reader's Digest fashion.
Yep, Reader's Digest version, basically the new bylaws, because this is statutory, oh, sorry.
And that's really what I need.
Okay.
Is just that simple, high-level walkthrough.
But in the packet, if you keep going past the ORS pages, that
That's right. Okay.
That is
then
the
you'll get
newly
into
proposed.
the bylaws. Yeah.
So really, we've just sort of updated statutes, as you know, are not always clear and straightforward. There's two that pertain to this particular council, and so we tried to kind of straighten it out because there is some repetition in the statute, but we listed that. So that's in your Article 2, page 1. Instead of just saying how many positions, which are 15 that are statutorily required, we said that, and then we listed exactly who that is and who they're appointed by.
So my question is really on Article 3, or questions.
Yes.
So if I could jump in here.
Sure.
If I understand what is in Section 1 and Section 2, there is our county commissioner, as Commissioner Willie has been serving. Then there are a total of 3 layperson positions designated by the Board of Commissioners.
Correct.
So I have 2 questions related to that. I'm confused about the layperson.
Yes.
Particularly with the handout, but also in the worksheet, in the work session topic sheet narrative, what I didn't follow is, under the summary of topic, I'll wait till you find it.
Yes, I found it. Thank you.
Okay. On the bottom of page 1, that bottom paragraph talked about how the board wanted to make sure that there was 5 lay committee positions.
Correct.
But I didn't see how they went from 5 to down to just 3.
Yes. So I'll try, okay, so, and this is where I struggled in what was old and what was new and how to best kind of extrapolate this for you. So what I believe is that the old bylaws, the current bylaws written in 2001 had those additions of community lay persons that were appointed by district by the commissioner, as well as 2 additional minority representatives, how it was termed back then, on the council. Those were appointed by the board. That should be what is current. What I can tell from the records is that ending in 2014, they were never filled. Maybe they were never recruited, maybe they were never, people didn't apply. I don't know that, I can't really tell that in the file.
So 3 plus 2 is 5.
It was actually 5 plus 2 is 7, plus there was a position back when the Commission on Children and Families existed that was also mandated in there, and so that was something the commissioners back then had appointed. There was a member for that. That went away in 2013, and so it just seemed to kind of disappear. And then, like I said, there just didn't seem to be applicants for those county commissioner district-appointed positions. They're on the books, but they just didn't seem, nobody seemed to come back to the board and ask for those appointments. So I don't know what happened between 2014 and 2018.
Well, our current experience, as of the last year and a half at least, and I think a little bit longer, based upon the work of our community engagement team, is if we advertise it, they will come.
Right.
So I am not inclined at this stage of the game to reduce
Okay.
our community involvement.
And it's an interesting thing because it is, and for PSCC right now, the new bylaws feel like an expansion because we only have 1 statutorily appointed position there. But to the rules right now, and to your point, it's a reduction. So thank you for asking that
So I
question.
think the failure
That's
is on
clear.
our part.
Absolutely.
To make sure that our community knows of this important work and of the opportunity to participate in this important work. I also did some investigation of my own on our county website.
Yes.
And there, I was left wanting as well, even to the point of trying to find out when the meetings are,
Right.
what the agenda is, what the minutes were, what was presented.
And we have all those, so I'm discovering that isn't making it back to the website either. And so that is moving forward, that is in the plan. And you can see from the matrix I just gave you today, Because I noted that, Chair Harrington, the sentence in the description on the website, it's like one sentence. So I have expanded that right here, but it's not done. It needs some more work, just
Well-
to indicate when we meet, who is statutorily required, and what the membership looks like.
And when I read the packet on Friday for this topic, I could only get the applications for 2 people, not for all 7.
I know.
Okay. not-
Yeah, no,
I'm just making sure I'm on the
No,
same
you
page
are.
as you.
You
That's
are.
all. I don't have a problem in understanding today that there are some shortcomings.
Right.
Therefore, there is room for improvement. Okay?
Exactly.
It is what it is.
Yep.
Let's go forward with that knowing and make things better.
Perfect, yeah.
That's my approach.
That sounds great, and I have some ideas, maybe suggestions for discussion on moving forward with membership, but I don't know if you want to go through any more of the bylaws or have any more questions for the bylaws?
Well, that was the entirety of my questions.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean we should stop in terms of checking in with the remaining articles and sections.
Some of the other language we just cleaned up was adopting this board's phraseology for chair. I think it old said chairman, chairwoman kind of thing. So we updated that language, just made sure that all of the rules of procedure matched other boards and commissions and is what it was supposed to be.
I just, for the record, want to note that Commissioner Rogers has joined us, and we're on topic item 4, the Public Safety Coordinating Committee.
And then
And
after a
there's a new handout. I'm not sure one was left at Commissioner Rogers' station. Here you go. There's a new handout right here.
Erin, if I could.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just make a comment here. You know, I'm reflecting a little bit on the discussion that you and I, along with Alex and Jajit, had last week with a member of the community about our sheriff's office and some of the protocols there. Given the fact that we're fielding questions like that, given the fact that we're in our society is in a different situation, I think that this council, with some limited, it doesn't even have to be great amount of advertisement, if you will, will create a lot of interest. And I think that we need to make sure that this is that we've got the iron out and we're smoothing out all the wrinkles.
Exactly.
So that we can access those who are interested. Because if I remember right, the one gentleman said, you know, I really would like to be on an advisory committee, but I don't want it to be about budget.
Exactly,
So-
yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Thank you.
Yes.
I have a question. I appreciate how you've laid out in this bylaws proposal the representation under section 1. I have a question for legal, if I might. I was just thinking that I really like how our staff puts together these committee rosters for us, particularly when we're entertaining applicants. There are a limited number of positions where the board makes appointments, but the bylaws also designate the other positions as directed by the ORS. Is it okay? In my layman terms, I distinguish between designated positions and appointed positions. And I was just wondering if we could at least in this chart indicate the other designated positions. It doesn't have to be who they are, just what the designated positions are.
Yeah, I don't see any legal issues with that. They certainly can be on there, and it is set by the statute, so we're
Happy to do that.
limited.
And I noticed that down at the bottom, the 3 asterisks does say appointed by position. So,
Yeah.
but you're just saying just name the position, district attorney, sheriff.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And I put this label designated, you know, just like you have these bolded
Yes.
sections.
Perfect.
It would help people understand that there are other experts involved with this important committee and work.
I agree. And if somebody's looking to apply, it might be nice to see who else they'll be joining if they were selected for that board or commission. So I think that's a great idea.
Commissioner Willie, you're on the committee. Any thoughts?
No, this has been a really thoroughly discussed at the committee level. Everybody is very engaged and receptive to the changes and certainly, I think, to the additional positions. I wasn't aware of the missing link in there, and so I don't think I heard that. Anyway, it's good to get caught up and, as Pam said, getting the iron to get rid of the wrinkles. So
We are ironing for
That's right.
sure.
we had plenty of those.
The last update or change, I think the difference on the new bylaws is one that County Council reminded me of, and that's just on page 5, the last sentence, that the Board of Commissioners must approve all amendments to the bylaws. So clearly, that's good to have in there. One difference you'll note, or you would note if you had the old version, is that the old version of the bylaws did cap the membership at 25, no more than 25 members, which was interesting because that's not found in statute. So that must have just been the decision at the time of the council and the Board of County Commissioners to adopt. The Public Safety Coordinating Council's recommendation on that is sort of to your earlier point. For them, this feels like an expansion of seats that would align with the board's priority in terms of membership. For this commission and looking at the old bylaws, it looks like a reduction, so we probably need direction and make a decision on that. But the council is not opposed to further expansion. They were just feeling like there hasn't been a lot of effort in recruitment, retention, and they'd like to fill the 2 additional and then maybe expand, but clearly would take direction from your board on that.
Well, I know I've contributed mine that right now on page, well, through these proposed bylaws, there are just 3 community members. And if I counted right, that makes 18 people. And I would like to see that increased by 2 more.
2 more.
So that there's 20 positions. And I don't see any reason why, other than as designated, the language can't change from this up to 25 to the representation number that is listed in the bylaws.
Right.
But that's my 2 cents.
So we
Ray,
would
did you
change
have a
that
comment?
3rd bullet under number 2 on page 2 to just reflect 4 additional lay community member positions designated by the Board of Commissioners.
Well, I think it doesn't need, oh, I see, got it, because you're saying that everything in section 1 is by the
Statute,
statute.
right.
Yes, yes, and that the additional should just be 4, yep,
Okay,
instead of
we can reflect that.
Aaron,
Yeah.
how do we ensure on this council that we have a representation from our disadvantaged and people of color, our BIPOC community?
That is a great question, one that I will need a little bit of assistance from Cia Lindstrom and my team just on going through recruitment. So my understanding is that the recruitment, we make a dedicated effort during recruitment to target many different communities in the county. And I want to make sure, I mean, one idea we had at Public Safety Coordinating Council, you know, many people on the council, the departments, corrections and juvenile, work with so many community-based agencies. And so making sure we do that additional outreach.
While I understand that we do that, and we do that with many of our councils, I would think that in this case, we may want to consider directly saying we would like, you know, a representative from a community-based organization that does X, Y, Z.
Right.
Am I out
Well,
over
we-
my ski tips here? I
There's
saw
already
Steve.
one
The language is there
on the second bullet,
loosely.
on the top of page 2.
Very
Very top, second bullet.
Victims of crime. Is that the one you're?
Yes. You were pointing to the expertise.
Yeah, I understand that. But that's for victims of crime.
Yep.
And I'm thinking about, you know, someone from a Central Cultural, someone from Apano. I'm looking at being more specific to the BIPOC community. And we
Well,
do that.
that's the double-edged sword here of making sure you're not putting the responsibility of BIPOC just on one person versus having a suite of laypersons, 5, in the current proposal.
And I do understand that.
Okay.
I'm just asking for discussion
Yeah.
around the issue that right now in our society, what we're seeing is a sea change. There's just no
Exactly.
question about it. And maybe a better question is, how does this makeup reflect that societal push? So that's probably a better way to put it.
Yes.
And are we confident that we communicate, not just how does it, but how do we effectively communicate that this is what we do? You know, by saying that we make we make an effort to look at all issues, I don't think that that's strong enough for our public right now.
I agree.
So
Yeah.
I'm challenging us to find
Yeah.
maybe a little bit more direct pathway.
Madam Chair,
Yeah?
may I weigh in here? Because we've discussed this. And what we're proposing and why we didn't try to change the language here any different than what is there is we're going to propose that the county put together a policy regarding involvement in committees for community members. And then, and in that policy, we would describe how we go about it and where we work to make that happen. Rather than trying to define it in each set of bylaws, then what we would, once we have that policy in place, we would come back and each bylaw would adopt that policy is what dictates how your community members are chosen. We did that because otherwise we're finding every set of bylaws has a different way of describing it.
Support that, thank you.
And so that's why we didn't try to refine this. The issue came up and we decided not to try to refine it here, but to put the effort into creating the policy and then backfilling into the bylaws once that policy is done.
Thank you.
And the council's aware of that and supports that fully as well. So we just were struggling a little bit with language and the differences between the boards and commissions and really wanting that consistency in place.
So, and I'm asking this question without having an opinion going into this. It may sound leading when I ask this question, but do you think that there's any confusion between a public safety coordinating council and an oversight?
Oh, I think there will be a lot of confusion. And
Okay.
that's one thing I was going to say. I think we just have to be really careful about helping people understand what this is and what this isn't. But it is a great way to get involved. And, you know, to your point on membership, I think another thing to think about is retention of our members. I could see in the record sometimes people would just drop off. Maybe there's great reason I just couldn't see. And I think retention and making people feel welcome, that could be a fairly intimidating group to just come into if you're just kind of a member of the community that wants to get involved. And so I think we have to look at how we engage, how we retain, how we really value what people bring to the table so they're just not sitting in a chair with a bunch of people who are making decisions anyway. And so I think that's a really important piece of our next step.
Onboarding people to boards and
Exactly.
commissions is
Exactly. And our current lay member, I'll get to this in membership when we're ready to move, but our current lay member, Lindsay Koppenger, has been on the council since 2010. She's actually the chair of our committee. She does a fantastic job, and she is getting ready to retire, but she's really invested in succession planning. And so she's working on an orientation binder and just taking that next step again and welcoming people in and then retaining them, hopefully, for as long as they want to be and can be appointed.
Thank you. And what I'm trying to do here is just hold up the mirror about what we're seeing, you know, and how are our actions reflected in that.
Exactly.
Well, you know, it could be that we could also recommend to the state legislature that they change the language in these two ORSs from a public safety coordinating council to some other language. We could advocate for that, but we also have control of all of the communication to our community about what the Public Safety Coordinating Council does and their role, as opposed to other kinds of things that other people are interested in seeing.
Right. Exactly. So that's bylaws. I'll reflect the change we talked about and can bring that back if that's what the board would like. In terms of membership and the tricky piece where we are right now, just again, so not realizing that in the perfect world, we would have recruited in, I think, what would have been last fall. PSCC at our November 20th meeting would have made some recommendations on the reappointments because Kevin Dowling's term was up. He's the victim agency representative. And Lindsay Koppenger's term was up. She thought she went through 2020, but it turns out she expired in 2019 as well. Given that timeline, I think we would have made some recommendations at PSCC on November 20th, came to the board in December, and had that appointment begin at 2020, at the beginning of this year, 2020. And so what I can tell you is looking back in our software system on November 20th, there was only one applicant at that time, and it was Kevin Dowling for CARES asking for a reappointment. By late January, we realized, like I said, that Lindsay Koppenger's term actually had expired. And so she was asking for reappointment. We were in the middle of bylaws. COVID canceled our meeting in March, and we spent our subsequent meeting in May and July, because we meet every other month, hashing out the bylaws that we've presented today. And so that is just kind of an honest assessment of where we are. We're 8 months behind. So I have a couple ideas on how to proceed, but really need some direction from the board. We could go ahead and talk about the reappointment of Kevin Dowling into the victim serving agency position and the reappointment of Lindsay Koppenger that would have begun term at January 1 of 2020. And then there is currently an open recruitment. You can see on the matrix there are 5 other.
What I'd recommend is, it doesn't seem to me like we've done a really good recruitment
no.
to match the current bylaws
Right.
and so forth. I think what we need to do is get the bylaws adopted. I think it makes sense to move forward with Kevin's appointment as the victim serving agency position.
Okay.
I think it's perfectly reasonable to appoint Lindsay Koppenger through the remainder of this year and open up a new recruitment and ensure that all the new positions start no later than January of next year.
Perfect.
And that between now and then, we're still going to have some COVID chaos in
Right.
all of this. So that gives us some time, gives you some time to get all the records together, the website information together, take the time, because I know our community engagement team is really maxed out. It will help all of us do a decent job at the community recruitment.
Excellent.
Yeah, just a clarification on Lindsay. She has done a great job as chair just the year and a half that I've been there, and brings a considerable amount of experience to the table on this. So is it her intent that at the end of 20 she would walk away from the committee, or she just wanted to walk away from the chair position?
My belief is walk away from the committee, retire from public safety commute.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure
Yeah,
that
that's a good question.
weren't saying, well, let's just extend her through 20, and she's going, well, I could have stuck around for a couple more years and just kind of slid on out, but
No,
as
it
long
says
as
right
that's her
here in the
intent,
work
then-
session
Yeah.
packet.
Well, I read it in the work session page that I thought that, but I wasn't sure, again, I wasn't sure she was ready to step out completely.
Yeah, she is, but she cares deeply about the council, as you know, and so she's wanting to work with on succession planning and just making it a better place for new community citizens that come in.
Okay.
Okay, so if I could recap,
Heck, maybe there's an idea there for having a Zoom meeting with her to just help the community better understand what the Public Safety Coordinating Council does, what she's gotten out of it over the years, and help people decide if they want to apply or not.
that's a great idea. She has a lot of great things to say, and she's learned a lot. She'll be the first one to say. So if I could just recap, so I can come back to your board at the business meeting on August 18th. We're kind of place held there right now for bylaws and the reappointments of Kevin and Lindsay. And then the current recruitment that's open, we'll just work toward what you just said. We'll work toward looking at our applications, getting the word out there, and then I'll come back to you all probably fall at some point and work on appointments that would begin January 1 of 2021.
Yeah, let's try to make sure that at least a month or so, the revamped information is available on the website.
Yes.
And if Ms. Koppenger, am I pronouncing that
Yes.
right? Ms. Koppenger is interested in having something like that Zoom call to make sure that that is able to happen before the recruitment closes as well.
Excellent. Okay. Thank you so much for your time. This was really helpful.
Thank you.
Yeah, good job, Aaron. Thank you.
Thank you, Erin.
Thank you.
Great. Well, let's see, where are we? It's 2:30, we're ahead of schedule by half an hour. Would members like to take a 15-minute break here and then pick up with the remaining topics? Because Yes, we could take 20. Would you like to take 20? Yes. Okay, we'll take a break for 20 minutes and we'll pick back up at 2:50. That's 2:50. Okay, great. Thank you. Sounds good. Thanks, Pam. We're going to take an additional 5 minutes at least for break, so just so you all know, okay?